All right, we're ready to go, Nick. I've got. I'm going to just retweet it and say we're live. Get some more people in here, and then we will get rolling. We will get rolling. All right. It just takes a cut. We got a lot of people already. All right, let's get started. Well, I'm Keith Niebuhr. That's Nick Torre. This is Talking Gators, our Sunday night live show that we do every week on the Gators Online YouTube channel. And we got a lot to talk about today, Nick, because that was some kind of loss that Florida took yesterday.
Yeah.
Let me make sure I get the score right. 39-36 to win Arkansas in overtime. Hope everybody can hear me here.
Yep,
And yeah, Nick, I mean, just one of those losses where, it was just a weird game from the start. Arkansas goes right down the field, scores, Florida fumbles, it's returned, it's 14-0, 3 minutes and 6 seconds into the game, and you don't know what's going to happen. Then Florida ties it, and you're thinking, hey, they look like world beaters now. They may run away with this thing. And one team would get a little edge, then the other team would catch right back up, and neither could really create any separation, although I thought Florida had a few chances to do that, Nick. They had the ball at the end of the first half. If they could have scored a touchdown, they also got the ball to start the second half. They could have done something like that, but just could never really get away from Arkansas. Botched extra point attempt, proved costly as Florida then needed a field goal with 8 seconds left to win the game, and that was missed, and that was a story in itself, how that all went down. But it shouldn't even have come to that. Florida should have been up by one already at that point. So just a weird game, and you kept thinking to yourself, what's going to go wrong next? What's going to happen next? Because it felt like Arkansas, I think for a good bit of the game, maybe outplayed Florida a little bit, but Florida fought and hung around and took the lead. But Nick, they never could just take control of the game. And so I'm talking in circles here. Just your general thoughts on the loss. I mean, we'll get into the details of it. We'll get in the weeds in a minute, but shocking loss, really.
Yeah, I mean, this was your chance to be bowl eligible. And I know fans will say, well, it's a toilet bowl or the nobody cares bowl. But those bowl practices mean something. And last year, Florida had to play early on December 17th. I'm a degenerate gambler. Unfortunately, I got COVID, so I missed the Las Vegas Bowl. It wouldn't have been the toilet bowl to me. I would have enjoyed myself on the craps table and the blackjack table, Keith. But you're going to get DJ Lagway on campus early, and he can practice. You have the bulk of your players. And I continue to say this, and you can call me an apologist for Billy Napier or not. I don't know if my special teams question earned me any favor with Billy, so I might be on the wrong side of both fences here, Keith. But the best players on this team are freshmen, sophomores, redshirt freshmen, transfer portal players, guys that they've brought in. And I think it's important to get bowl practices. I think if Florida makes a bowl game, it'll probably be on December 30th, Music City Bowl, Duke's Mayo Bowl, one of those. So you should be able to get in most of your practices. They take a week off for finals, so you might not get the full 15, but it's important. This was your chance to do it. Arkansas was better than 2-6, and I think a couple factors played in, and it's almost a perfect storm of things. Like Florida gets banged up against Georgia. They're not healthy. You're out 3 defensive starters. Arkansas gets healthy. Getting Rocket Sanders back, he's an all-American type of running back. Getting him back, and he carries the ball 18 times. As a defensive coordinator, you're looking for patterns and tendencies. What do you not have when you have a first-time play caller? Patterns and tendencies. So you almost have to come in. And I said on our podcast, our show on Thursday with Zach, you might have to come in with a base defense, and you're going to have to adjust because you're not sure what they're going to do. I guess you could go back and say, well, Guyton worked under Briles, and they might look and do what Briles did, and that's exactly what they looked like. KJ Jefferson ran the football. Arkansas went back to what is Sam Pittman's identity and ran the football. And without Cam Jackson, without Shamar James, without Tyreek Sapp, Florida was just getting gashed. And especially late when they needed it, KJ Jefferson was just carrying the ball and doing what he wanted to do. So it's kind of for me, I can see the perfect storm of things that happened, but also Arkansas had 481 yards of offense. That's more than the last 2 games they had combined. It was your chance, your opportunity in black jerseys for the first time in school history to become bowl eligible for this really, really tough stretch, to get some goodwill back after I mean, I guess it's embarrassing. It's what I expected in Jacksonville, but an embarrassing loss to Georgia. And instead of that, you have more like this. Florida special teams are just like the corner of the kitchen table that you bash your toe into every Saturday. And when I asked Billy Napier about it on Saturday, he's like, what do you mean? Specifically, what are you talking about? And I'm like, today or all season? Because you've had guys with the same jerseys on. You've had 9 guys, 10 guys, 12 guys on the field for special teams plays. There's blocked kicks, blocked punts, like you name it. So like it's frustrating, and Florida will not and should not be favored to win any of their games the rest of the way.
Yeah. Nick, so many concerning things, but also there's always some bright lights in a game. We're going to talk about those a little later, but again, the record is the record. And even though Arkansas had all those close losses, 13 points of losses in 3 games on the road to LSU, Ole Miss, and Alabama. That's it. An aggregate of 13 points. They were in all those games. They were going to beat somebody. But it's still a 2-win team. And quite frankly, it says a lot about the character of that team that they didn't mail it in, that they lost their offensive coordinator. And I think the biggest thing for them, you don't hire an offensive coordinator. You don't fire an offensive coordinator, put a new guy in place, and in a week have this whole new offense.
Right.
It's the same offense. It's just, what you call, and I may add a new wrinkle here or there. But supposedly they simplified it, and the kids really bought in, and they had a very good week of practice. And Sam Pittman said, that the Arkansas head coach, that he felt good by Wednesday. He went over and he liked what the offense was doing. He went over and spent some time with the defense. He felt like they were going to be better, specifically up front. And he knew that his team was either going to, he said, look, he told the team, you either going, this is a lesson for every team. He said, you are either going to quit or you're going to fight. There's no maybe. You're going to do one or the other. Sam Pittman, you're going to do one or the other. And he said they fought and they did fight. And, to its credit, Florida didn't exactly mail it in. I mean, it's just one of those things. They just didn't win. They just didn't win. They didn't execute.
To your point there, Keith, you go down 14-0. This is a 2-6 football team. I watched their game against Mississippi State. I watched KJ Jefferson get calls from Dan Enos, and Dan Enos wasn't there in Gainesville. And the camera is catching him roll his eyes on the field at the plays that are being called. If you don't go down 14-0, if you can create some separation, is that a team that then rolls over, plays dead like a good dog? Yeah. But you never put them in a situation for that. So, of course his team kept fighting. They were in the game the whole time. Yeah. A question from Justin. We're going to get to as many of your questions as possible. Nick and I are still trying to process things too, guys. I mean, hey, look, Florida's 5-4 now, correct, Nick? 5-4. Yep. Coming off 2 straight losing seasons. Nick, they haven't had 3 straight losing seasons. I'm stealing your stat here. Go ahead, Nick. Well, first off,
because we want to get to Justin's question. Yeah.
Yes, but credit to me. We had to do game predictions, season predictions back on June 12th, Keith. My game predictions are 9-0.
That's interesting. What are your game predictions each week? I'm just curious because
June
things change since June.
As of June 12th, I am a perfect 9-0 on the year.
Nick, I don't know how to break this to you, but I don't think Gator Nation's going to be is going to be glad that you're 9-0 on these predictions. You know what I mean?
But
this is not a moment.
I have them losing to LSU, beating Missouri, beating FSU. I think most fans right now would love if my June 12th predictions went 12-0. Yeah. That's a 7-5 season, and you ruin FSU. Nick, I think a lot of them right now, and we're laughing here, and we're not trying to, you got to laugh to cover the pain. Exactly. This isn't exactly, for a lot of you watching us and listening to us, and this is like a group therapy session. It's not a moment for levity. It's not. It's like, this is frustrating for people. Yeah. We get it, man. We get it. I put on our board yesterday, Nick, and again, Justin, we're going to get to you a second. I said, that one of the things is for the older Florida fans, they're still scarred by the Doug Dickey and Galen Hall eras. For people my age,
they're spoiled by the Spurrier and Urban Meyer eras. Then for the younger people, it's been just a decade of, I mean, it's just a weird, every age group, every generation is just feeling something weird right now. I always text Lee McGriff, the former Gator player and Keller commentator, just his thoughts right now. He's like, it's just, I don't want to be off the record conversations, but he's kind of mystified like the rest of us. But anyway, Justin's question says, hey, it really concerns me. Billy Napier's response to your question, Nick, about special teams yesterday. You brought this up earlier. It gives me Dan Mullen vibes. Every week, something happens that shouldn't happen at this level. What's your opinion of this, Nick? Should he be? Now, Billy Napier is, for those of you that haven't met him, incredibly nice, incredibly cordial, affable. You get the feeling when you talk to Billy Napier that if you told him that you'd had a bad day, he would actually feel bad for you. Like he's that kind of person, okay? But press conferences are an interesting thing because everything you do comes into question, particularly after a loss. And so human nature dictates, Nick, that you're going to be defensive, right? You're going to be defensive. And Billy Napier is a human being like the rest of us. But Nick, what was your take on that? Was it a deflection? Was it him just trying to protect the people that made the mistake? Or should he have said, you know what, it's my mistake, I'm in charge? What would have been the right way to handle that, assuming he handled it the wrong way? And I'm not making that judgment.
Well, here's the rub. Analysts, while you can have as many of them as you want on the staff, in the NCAA rulebook, there is no stipulation. You can have 8,000 analysts on your staff. They can't coach during practice. They can't coach during the game. They can help game plan. They can help identify recruits. They can do some scouting, not like Michigan, but do some scouting. But per NCAA rule, they can't coach. Now, if you want to believe that every school in the country abides by that because the NCAA is such a good watchdog and does such a good job at policing their rules, then you can believe that. So asking Billy Napier that question, he can't say, well, our special teams coach didn't coach them up well, because you don't have a special teams coach. You have an analyst and a graduate assistant, and neither of them, by NCAA rule, can be coaching your players in that moment. So I think there's other ways you can answer it. You can say, hey, that's on me. I'm the head coach. It falls on my shoulders. We have to do better for our team. And I think fans are getting tired of hearing we have to do better for our team. You want to do better for your team? Hire a play caller. You want to do better for your team? Hire a special teams coach who can do that. The most frustrating part to me about the end of the game situation is before the first down play, you had a timeout. So during that timeout, where are you? How are you, not the adults, gathering the guys around and saying, hey, if we're going to be throwing the ball because there's 18 seconds, something like that left on the clock. If we catch it and get out of bounds, cool. We'll have time to figure out if we're going to run another play or put the kicking team on. If it's a first down, then we have time to clock it. But my point is you have time to discuss this. So when you get a 20-yard gain in a first down and you've got more than 10 seconds left, immediately Graham Mertz is signaling to clock it, to spike the ball. Khalil Jackson is signaling to spike the ball. My problem is you don't have a designated coach, one of your 10 assistants, that is in that huddle and getting the guys ready. So you have miscommunication consistently on special teams, week in and week out. That was my frustration. Going back to Billy's answer to my question, I don't think he's going to say that. He's not going to, call the NCAA during the press conference and say, hey, by the way, we're cheating. Our analysts are coaching during the game. So the only option for me there is to acknowledge it. Yes, we have had bad special teams. We've had miscommunications. That ultimately falls on my shoulders, and we will fix it. But that's not the route he took.
I think, I've been gone for a while and I came back, but, I grew up in Gainesville, went to UF, saw a lot of the peaks and valleys. I feel like, most of my friends are Gator fans. A lot of you I know. I feel like this is where Spurrier really connected with the fans. Boy, he was edgy after losses. Oh, man. Always took the blame. You know what he would do? And by the way, I'm not saying Billy doesn't do that, but he would say after wins, he was often more critical of the players than after losses because he didn't want them to get too high. And after losses, he didn't want to get them too low. So he would publicly take the blame more often than not. I was in a lot of those press conferences, 92, 93, 94. And then again, 98, 99. And that's what he would do. He would shoulder that. And so if I would give Billy Napier some advice, and not that he's asking for it, and I doubt he cares what I think, he might. He's actually, like I said, he's a good guy. Now I'm a little older than Billy. And I, again, knowing the Florida fan, Nick, they want to see, and this isn't him, but they want to see a little fire in those press conferences. And what they really want to see, Nick, if he comes in after that game and says, this is unacceptable, it's on me, no questions, we're getting back to work. Even something like that, I think a lot of people would say, okay, he gets it. He gets what we're feeling as fans, okay? Mm-hmm. But the way he handled it, and I'm not saying he handled it poorly, I'll let other people judge that, was basically he didn't want to throw anybody under the bus either. He's not going to name anybody. Hey, we're going to take care of it in the locker room and over at the football facility. But maybe what he could have done is, hey guys, just so you know, look, we messed that up. We know it. You know it. Everybody that saw it know it. But I'm not going to sit here and trash my guys. Okay. Yeah. But know that in that building, we're going to take care of it. Now, he did say something like that, but maybe not that as, I don't want to say I'm eloquent, but maybe not, it didn't get the point across the way I just did. But he's on the other hand, he's got to be him too. You can't be something you're not. So you're trying to weigh those two things. Pretty interesting. Hey, Nick, here's an interesting comment. Guy, appreciate you checking in. 45% of the snaps went to freshmen and sophomores. That is significant. It's hard right now to swallow these losses. God knows. This must be, Nick, this is kind of what 1979 must have felt like when they didn't win a game, but you knew they were young. Yeah. You knew there was hope, right? You knew there was hope. So you look at this roster, and Nick, I ask you this based on the players. There's two parts of this. Just because you have talent doesn't mean when they get older, you're going to win. You still got to coach, right? Yep. But based on the talent alone, should Florida fans be optimistic about the future? The young talent.
I still am. Okay. And we talk about the schedule next year. And I look at the schedule and it looks tough. Like UCF, Miami, Texas, LSU, Tennessee, Georgia, Florida State. But like Florida State has 18 seniors. Miami's losing their quarterback. Ole Miss is on the schedule. They're Lane Kiffin might get 6 more quarterbacks in the portal, Keith, just so other people can't have them. But like when I look at the schedule and I look at Florida realistically, guys that are contributing, they will lose Ricky Pearsall and Princely Mumialan. Everyone else comes back. Now you need help in the transfer portal on the offensive line. You need more defensive line depth, whether that's transfer portal. I think the guys you have now, the freshmen, redshirt freshmen, are good guys that can be depth pieces like Jamari Lyons. I think TJ Searcy, Kelby Collins can be starters, but like Florida returns a lot of depth. You're going to have to coach them. A lot of depth and a lot of those young players. Like I'm done calling them freshmen. Like Eugene Wilson's no longer a freshman. Like he's played enough. Jordan Castell has played enough. Like these are guys you're going to be counting on that are already the guys you're counting on this year. And they will be better for these lumps and these growing pains this year. They'll be better for it next year. So we talked so much about this Florida's gauntlet of a schedule. I've seen people call it the hardest schedule ever. But if you look at it, and obviously the transfer portal has to play out, but like I think Florida's team next year will be better than the team that they have this year.
Yeah.
So like, listen, hey, negative Nick all year this year, Keith. We're on a positive Nick campaign in 2024.
Apparently,
running for president.
Apparently, negative Nick is getting nosed out by negative Niebuhr at this point. So, I'm really not. I just like to point out the highs, the reality of the situation, which is there's a lot of highs, there's a lot of lows. That's why they're 5-4. But listen, Justin's got a comment and then a question. Justin Mathis, thanks for chiming in, by the way. If you like what we're doing, like button, subscribe button, leave a comment, and obviously Gators Online right now, $1 for 1 month. Got to get these plugs in. Justin says the D every week seems to be scared to hit, and when they do, they get manhandled and can't tackle. Is this a strength and conditioning problem? Do they not hit in practice? Give me your opinion why this continues to be a problem. Nick, nutshell version. I mean, that's a deep question, obviously.
One, you don't really hit in practice anymore, which is why I talked about it in our show after Utah, Keith, with that, hey, I was surprised they tackled so well because you don't really tackle to the ground. So That one was surprising to me. I see a lot of like arm tackles. So like there's guys in position like Jalen Kimber, perfectly timed blitz call by Austin Armstrong, and you just whiff on a tackle. And I see a lot of that. There was a lot of times where KJ could have been brought down in the backfield for a short gain. You miss a tackle and all of a sudden it's a 15-yard gain. So the interesting part with strength and conditioning and to me is there's a lot of shoulder injuries. And I think, listen, it's football. When you're tackling, you're doing a lot of that with your shoulders. Things can happen. You can pop a shoulder out and it can tear something. There's a lot of shoulder injuries. The linebacker room, even before Shamar James went down, is being held together by like duct tape. So I think if I'm Mark Hockey, I look at that. Hey, we had a lot of shoulder injuries. How do we change our offseason program to maybe prevent that, strengthen some of those little tendons and ligaments, and maybe we can fix that. It's not like having a bunch of ankle injuries where it's like, hey, you got rolled up on or you twisted it. I think it could be preventable. So that's why I kept saying, Keith, I don't know if it's you just don't have the guys yet or if it's a bad scheme. And when I went back and watched the game, I'm like, my Lord, these missed tackles. Like guys are in position to make plays. They just weren't making plays.
Yeah. Just for anybody that doesn't know, Nick and I don't know what nutshell answers are. Okay, we just go on. I'm rambling. He actually has info. That's the difference. All right, Ryder says, do you think hiring a play caller, if it happens, I know people have said, oh, it's definitely happening. I don't know that it's definitely happening, by the way, but do you think hiring a play caller and freeing Billy up to focus on other in-game stuff, if that happened, would we see less mishaps? Real quick, Nick.
Yes.
What do you think? You do.
Yes.
There you go. There you go. All right. Well, why? Why do you think that, Nick?
Shout out to Guy. He is a big bully. There's just so much coaches have to do now. Like when Steve Spurrier, he has that quote that I bring up all the time. If they hired you because you're calling plays, don't give it up. When Spurrier was coach, he could recruit three months out of the year, Keith, 4, no problem. We got plenty of time to go golfing, hit the beach. You're not just recruiting high school seniors, you're recruiting juniors. You're recruiting your current roster. You're recruiting other Division I teams rosters at all times, not to mention all the other things you have to do with NIL and fundraising and boosters and all this. There's just too much to do. And I don't think Billy was hired because he was a genius play caller. He was hired to recruit, to further this to rebuild the culture and rebuild the program. I think there's so many little errors that are happening. And we talk about the Army and they have a bunch of guys. There's a ton of moving parts. I've never really been inspired with a Billy Napier called game from start to finish. There's drives and there's spurts. But yeah, I think if he takes a CEO approach, I think he would be great at that. I think he's great at managing people. And I don't.
And people like him. I think people that work for him like him and respect him.
You love him. Yeah, they do. 100%. I like working with him. I have no problem with him. Like you said, he's a really great, genuine guy.
He is. I mean, I know people probably want me to just sit here and tell you he's a terrible human being, but I mean, now that doesn't win you games, but Eddie's got a point here. Question, Eddie Rojas, Nick and Justin. I guess I'm Justin. Do you feel that Florida has a culture that breeds leadership and installs pay attention to detail type of players? That's a tough one to answer, Nick.
Well, shout out to my guy Eddie. Eddie pitched for Florida. Started the Gator Collective. My guy. I don't know, Eddie. Like I think there are leaders. Like give me Tyreek Sapp. If football doesn't work out, he can just tour and be like a motivational leader. He would have other guys dragging Keith and I through the brick wall with them. I think Graham Mertz is a leader. I don't know if that was instilled because of Florida's program or if that's just who he is. I think like Tyreek Sapp always had that in him. So I do think there's accountability, but I'm comparing that to like the end of the Dan Mullen era when there was none. So there's definitely more now, but is it enough? I don't know. I don't know that I have an answer to that.
Yeah. Most disconcerting thing for you coming out of that game, Nick, and I know you're going to be writing this for tomorrow. Every game, there's things, even when you win big, there's things that catch your attention. You say, oh boy, they got to clean that up or they're not going to be more wins. But encouraging and discouraging, I know that's going to be one of your pieces coming up, but just off the surface, off the top of your head, what would be the most discouraging thing? Any one thing? Is it the special teams miscues? Is it,
Yeah, but
Yeah, what would it be?
that's tired. I think the most discouraging thing is not being with this stretch of games you have coming up, not getting bowl eligible against a
Yeah.
team, even though I said they're better, a 2-6 team coming to play at home.
Yeah. Nick, in this offseason, we heard a lot about how Florida lost a lot of one-score games last year. A lot of one-score games last year. And that basically the insinuation that the record could have been better last year. But this year I'm looking at Florida, and they have 4 losses, and one of them was by 13. It wasn't that close. One of them was by 19 at Kentucky. It wasn't that close. They lost to Georgia by 23. It wasn't that close. They lost a one-score game yesterday. However, they won a one-score game at South Carolina that I'm sure South Carolina feels like they got cheated, or not cheated. They blew it. I'm sure that's what they're thinking. Hey, it was a great comeback by Florida, by the way. I'm not saying it wasn't. But when you're the other team, you think you blew it. So there aren't all these one-score losses that they can really hang their hats on right now. Is the team – they went 6-7. I guess what I'm trying to say is the record very well could be worse this year than last year. Can you find places where you can still sell progress? Is it the youth? Is that really what they have to hang their hat on the most?
100%.
Is that the singular thing? Is that it?
Yeah.
Anything
Yeah.
else?
I mean, like youth, and that the youth is getting experience. Like I talked to somebody yesterday that was like, yeah, we told Jeremiah Smith that, hey man, we really could have used you out there. And I told them, maybe harsh, but this is the last year you can use that. At some point, if I'm the recruit, I look at you in 2024 or in 2025, if you're still here, and I go, well, why? I think I'm a great player, but why do you still need me this bad? It's your team now. And I think right now, around 75% of the roster are Billy Napier guys. That number will be in the 90s next year. Like, you can't keep using that excuse. So yes, you're young this year. I don't know that I will be championing that next year for them, Keith. To me, the selling point is we're young. Our best players are young. They're getting the experience they need right now, live reps, and they will be better for it next year.
Okay.
Other than that, the recruiting class is really great. Those are the 2 things you have to sell.
Sorry, I keep cutting. And I'm asking everybody out there their opinions here. So, and some of the Gator fans that are friends of mine, they've called and they'll say, hey, look, they are really young. And by the way, I had this conversation with somebody the other night. They said, yeah, but where's the consistency? They weren't buying it. So I asked you, Nick, yes, they are young. What do we attribute some of the poor performances to? Youth, which seems to come up in every conversation, or is there an element of they got to coach these guys better too? Because right now the fans, they're not necessarily, not many of them are buying that it's just youth. And rightly or wrongly, I don't know what's fair or what's not fair. I mean, I'm not a coach, okay? But sometimes what people's perception is essentially is the reality. So the losses, how much would you say are attributable to the youth, Nick? And how much is it attributable to, something's missing? Something. It's not just that. It's an unanswerable question. Obviously, we don't know.
Well, there's we can kind of break it down. Utah, I think both some youth, some terrible coaching decisions, blunders by the coaching staff. Kentucky, an awful game plan. You went into Kentucky and tried to beat Kentucky by playing Kentucky football. You don't have that roster. You should have looked at the film and known that. You didn't, and it cost you. So I blame the coaching staff for that one. I said it. You tried to out Kentucky. Georgia, you were never going to win that game. Florida, I mean, sure, anything can happen. Florida was never going to win that game. When Zach and I did our show during the bye week, I said, Georgia will cover. And he said, there's no line. And I said, it doesn't matter. Whatever the line, but give me a line. Georgia's covering. And then Arkansas, it's at what point, I guess then the sticking point for me is at what point do you stop blaming the coaches? And it's like, hey, maybe the coaches are coaching it and the players just aren't executing it. So the Arkansas game, just more like the Ricky fumble, that's kind of wishy-washy. That's not really in his nature, and that gets returned. Arkansas, that was the 6th time they had an opening drive touchdown. As bad as their offense has been, they seemingly do run their scripted stuff really well, Keith, at the beginning of the game. But like, I think Arkansas is a mixture of both. So I think when you look at it, there's been both.
I got to put my glasses on. I think this name here, Ray McCoy. Ray McCoy probably didn't think I was going to pull this up, and he probably thinks I'm going to yell at him. No, I like this comment, right? Billy is tuning you guys out. Us fans, he has to. Avoid the noise is all he can do. It's a great point. But you still have to be aware. Avoid the noise, but also be self-aware as a coach, and then aware of what you're doing right and wrong, but also aware of the expectations of a fan base, the feelings of a fan base. Mullen was so – I tell you, when Mullen in that press conference, Nick, when after the loss to Oklahoma in the bowl game, when he basically said, well, we weren't really trying to win, right? Basically,
that wasn't the 20 whatever Gators. And I'm like, dude, you just played and coached a football game with 100 guys in uniform, and then you're saying, that's not my team.
Well, and think about the people that, hey, Cotton Bowl, right? Wasn't it the Cotton Bowl or something like that? And get to go to this cool city. Go to this cool city, spend all this money on airfare and tickets and hotels and all that. And then I get to the game and it was already known that they weren't going to try hard, I guess.
And you spent weeks asking them to do all that, to come, to spend.
That actually happened before. In 1989, Florida went out to Anaheim and played Washington. I believe it was Emmitt Smith's last game as a Gator, Nick. And I think they led a very good Washington team, which won the national title either a year or two later. And I want to say they led them 7-0. And then lost 34-7. Just played young guys the whole game. I mean, there's probably nobody at that game. It was the old Freedom Bowl, but it was just kind of reminded me of that. But Ray, I like that comment. It's interesting. You're right. That's all he can do. But that said, if you don't figure out a way to win one of these last 3 games, it's going to be a pretty long and uncomfortable offseason, because sometimes people that write checks look at a record and say, I'm going to wait a little while before I write another check. Merchandise sales.
Without us getting too deep into it, Florida badly needs those checks to continue coming in.
Well, merchandise sales dip when you're not winning consistently. What are the other things that it impacts? I mean, it's a season ticket sale.
Merchandise sales. How many of you guys are spending your money on owning a piece of the black jerseys from Saturday?
Well, apparently a lot of people. What a money grab that was. Brilliant idea. But
to hang up on your wall to symbolize that loss. I don't know that they're going to sell the way they think they.
But that's what I'm saying, Nick. You can tune it all out, and I bet he's doing a good job of that. Yeah. I think this is a smart guy. But on the other hand, you still have to be aware of why people aren't thrilled, because if you can't figure that out, that's the essence of everything. I mean, all right.
It wasn't my job it's not my job to talk about, the perception or that thing. That his answer to that, like, he's not wrong, but like, don't say that after.
Well, this was the first time. Well, obviously, again, what you say is, I'm as mad as all of you. You know what? I'm actually more mad than all of you, and I'm going to make you guys happy someday. You stick with me, I'm going to make you happy.
Yeah.
That's it. They just kind of want to, and that's not his personality. Again, he's got to be himself, and I think anybody that would meet him would probably like the guy. Okay.
Keith, I think you're auditioning for Billy Napier's PR director.
I just think sometimes you got to step out of that element. It's like when you and I screw up and we have to call the bosses and apologize. And by the way, that does happen. We have to step out of our element. And I think that's maybe what he should have done. Again, just some friendly advice there. But yeah. All right. Nathaniel says, good players, you don't have to motivate them. We don't have enough of them. The roster still isn't where it needs to be. That's a fair point.
You're talking about 18, 19, 20-year-old guys. I'm sure Kirby Smart is motivating his team, which has the back-to-back national championships. Like, you still have to motivate young men.
Yeah, you do. There was another Sam Pittman quote that said, some coaches, this from yesterday, some coaches can get their players to play above their ability, and some can't. He wasn't pointing a finger at Florida. He actually said he thinks very highly of Bill, very complimentary. He was just saying in general, he was giving his offensive coordinator credit. Sometimes a guy just has that ability to get his guys to play a little bit above what their ceiling is. Yeah. And maybe Florida needs to do that. I mean, maybe they already are. I don't know how good this roster is right now. We know that the veteran part of the roster isn't anything special. We do know that. I mean, there's some good guys. Here we go. Chris says, listen, you guys are overreacting. Billy called for a TD on every play. Armstrong called a timeout or called for a turnover. The players just
Turnover.
can't execute. Okay.
You got to take all their scholarships, take all their NIL money. They're clearly not executing.
Nick, I am with you, though. We're going to run through some of these comments. I mean, look, there's a lot of youth on that team. We're going to find out next year, though. That's where the youth becomes experienced. You're going to have an influx of some more elite level high school guys that should be able to contribute some next year. You've got to then go out and you're going to have to probably do better in the portal than you've done the last couple of years, but it's doable. I think maybe it's a little easier sell to portal players, Nick, now, because coming off of last year, you didn't know what they really had, but a lot of these young guys are playing and looking good. So I think you can sell a guy in the portal. Look, this isn't the Florida team that it was 12 months ago. This is a team that's young and hungry and getting, you're going to, you could be that missing piece as opposed to we need you just to win 6 games. You know what I mean? I think that's going to be a little bit more of a realistic selling point. What's the accountability for this team? Players mess up instead of being taken out. Well, Greedy, the thing is those coaches are at practice. So, in defense of the coaches, they kind of, and I see what your point is, but they see these guys in practice every day. They know what guys can and can't do. Sometimes a guy isn't playing because he's been late to 6 practices in the last month. But they're not going to tell us that. They try to keep everything internal. I'm just saying there's unknowns out there.
Yeah. It's not, Cersei Lannister in Game of Thrones with the walk of shame, they know more than us. They see more than us. And, doesn't mean their decisions are always correct. Right.
But they have more information than we all do. You, me, and everybody watching.
Yeah.
They have to trust their decisions. They don't always, they're not always right, quite frankly. That's the hard part of the job. All right. Harrison, who's one of our great contributors, says, my problem is the tackling is a want to. That's what Scott Brantley used to always say, the old Gator commentator and linebacker. My problem is that it's a want to thing, a technique thing, and an angle thing. Our linebacker technique, that's a lot of things. Our linebacker technique is awful, and they don't bring bad intentions to the moment.
They're all hurt right now. All of them are hurt.
Yeah.
Like Derek Wingo needs another shoulder surgery. Scooby Williams has already missed time with injury. Manny Nunnery's battled some things. And listen, it's football. We're going into week 11 of the season. Nobody feels great. I thought the tackling had been better, but maybe I was a sheep. Maybe I've been hoodwinked. Maybe I've been bamboozled because when I go and I pull up Florida's stats on defense against Power 5 opponents and I take away those 2 juicy cupcakes, they don't look good. They look bad.
And
not as bad as last year.
We were all sort of sheep after that win at South Carolina, weren't we, Nick? We all sort of.
No. I said South Carolina stinks.
Okay.
South Carolina stinks, but it was good that a young team learned how to win on the road. But South Carolina's terrible.
Here you go. Rob S. says, I'm so tired of the don't have the guys argument. Arkansas had guys wide open, and so has everybody Florida has played this year. All right. Zaire says, don't tell me this. Tell me Napier has his program in the right until I see an OC. And unless Florida wins 8 games next season, his fate will be sealed. Interesting. Look, everybody's frustrated right now. I'm sure over at Gators HQ, it's the same right now, trying to find answers, trying to find solutions. This was my concern, Nick, that theoretically Florida should get better as the season goes along because of all the youth on the team, right? The problem is you're getting better theoretically, but when you lose a few games, you start thinking you're a 5-6 team, you're a 5-5 team, a 5-4 team. And sometimes you play like what your record is, even though maybe you're on an upward path, if that makes any sense at all. And you wonder where their psyche is going to be, because not only do you have to be 100% physically ready to play on Saturdays, Nick, you need to be 100% mentally sharp on Saturdays too. And blowout losses to Georgia, devastating losses like yesterday, like you always say, you can't let these things beat you twice. But does self-doubt start creeping into their heads? Why can't we as a team get this done? What am I doing wrong? You know what I mean? And there's a human element to all this too. And so there's a lot going on over there. They're trying their hardest. They go into every game thinking they're going to win. Trust me. They believe they're going to win every single week. But does doubt start creeping in? And this is this next game, we don't know whether Jaden Daniels, he's been in the concussion protocol, LSU's star quarterback. We don't know what his situation is going to be, but this is an interesting game coming up, Nick, because boy, that LSU offense is good, and Florida hadn't proven it can stop too many people lately, and it worries the hell out of me going into that game. It's a concern.
Jaden Daniels will do whatever he wants to against Florida's defense. I would almost wonder, and you guys can chime in, Florida fans who were around for Doug Nussmeier, would you rather lose to Jaden Daniels, or would you rather Doug Nussmeier's son beat you in Tiger Stadium? I'd venture to guess other people would not like beloved former offensive coordinator Doug Nussmeier's son to beat their team.
Let me get Marcia in here. I love her photo, by the way. Marcia's question is, or not question, comment. Hey, these guys are young. Cut them some slack. That's a great point. I got to tell you, Marcia, most of the criticism I hear, I hate to say, it's not really about the players. O-line, sure. Guys not tackling, sure. But most of the people complaining seem to be directing it toward the adults, rightly or wrongly. I mean, look, when you're making the big paychecks, that's just the way it goes. They know that. I mean, Billy's been around the block. Bateman, Spencer, Corey, all these guys on that staff, they understand. They're not living in this world where they think Florida fans are happy right now with what they're doing. They know, okay? But yeah, you're right. And I think the fans are trying to cut the young players some slack. I think they are doing that. But at the end of the day, you just lost to a 2-win team at home. I mean, it's hard to really, how do you find the silver lining there? The silver lining is way off in the future right now. I mean, if Florida's going to be a lot better next year, like people hope because they're young and all that stuff, that's still a long way away, man. It's going to be a long off season for a lot of people, Nick, including us, by the way, because we've got to find content, All right. So here's some recruiting comment here. Amaris Williams and Nasir Johnson's are the big ones on Flip Watch. Amaris Williams, an edge committed to Florida. He was supposed to come in this weekend, but did not make it in. He's going to be at Ohio State supposedly this coming weekend. And that's an unofficial visit. We'll be on an official visit to Tennessee the weekend after that. I think Ohio State is Florida's big competition there. He told me it was really close last week. I still felt good about Florida, but the fact he didn't make it in this weekend, Nick, can't be good. Florida's just got to survive his next two visits, the Ohio State visit, the Tennessee visit, get to the December in-home visit. So the week after the FSU game, Florida coaches will be able to go meet with him once a week up to signing day. And Billy Napier will get one in-home visit as the head coach. So those face-to-face meetings are going to be vital. They've just got to hope he doesn't decommit or flip before then, because I fear if that happens, there'll be no coming back. Nasir Johnson, defensive tackle from Dublin, Georgia, committed to Florida as well, flirting with FSU, flirting with Georgia. We think right now Georgia's probably the bigger threat of the two. I believe he's set to officially visit Georgia this coming weekend. We should know a lot coming out of that. You really don't want to lose either one of those guys. Amaris Williams is an edge. As you see, that Florida, KJ Jefferson at times, Nick, had a lot of time to throw. Florida's got to get better at that crucial positions. That helps you get off the field on third down. Nasir Johnson, I don't think he would be ready-made to play right away in year one personally. Amaris Williams could contribute in year one. So, all right, next comment. Scat Daddy. While not the only factor, I believe missing our leading tackler and the defensive line guys contributed to the loss. I don't think KJ Jefferson has all these big runs with Shamar James there. That's an interesting point, Nick. They were missing some guys. That's kind of got lost in the weeds here. How significant was it that those guys didn't play yesterday?
I mean, that's huge. That's huge. Shamar James is your leading tackler. He's become a vocal leader, which is kind of out of his comfort zone. Cam Jackson's a space-eating gap nose tackle, defensive tackle. Tyreek Sapp is your emotional leader. He leads like when players get around and it's a team huddle, whether it's position or full team. Tyreek Sapp is the guy in the middle getting players ready. That's the guy that they look to. He's on the sideline doing what he can, but you miss him on the field. So yes, that stuff matters. But you still need to make plays like the other guys. Man, I thought Miami Nunnery had a good game. Jordan Castell had to make, a dozen tackles. That stuff does matter, but at what point do you I guess they haven't had enough time to fill the roster. You have to keep stacking elite recruiting classes. Stacking great recruiting classes isn't good enough. I think Eddie put up a stat about the offensive line. And I know we were talking about defense, but the offensive line, Florida has one offensive lineman in the top 50, 100, Keith. How many does Georgia have? Like, it's unfair to Billy to grade him against Kirby because he's only been here for a fraction of the time, but that's just the fact of the job. You're at Florida. You're going to be compared to Georgia, Alabama, Texas, Ohio State. Like, those are the teams you're going to be compared to.
All right, so number one goal, try to somehow win one of these next 3 games, right? Missouri, so LSU's coming off of an emotional loss last night to Alabama. That is their big rival. Alabama's got like 6 rivals. That is LSU's big rival, okay? Emotional loss. We don't know the health of the quarterback. Week after that, Florida goes to Missouri. Florida's lost 2 of the last 3 at Missouri, and I think 3 of the last 5 at Missouri. Missouri just lost a tough game yesterday to Georgia. Wow, they were competitive, though. This week they play Tennessee. Okay, so if they lose that game, they'll be coming off 2 hard-fought losses. And then all of a sudden, they're not playing for as much as what they were playing for this past week and next week. So if you're a Florida fan, those are some of the things you're hanging your hat on, right? But then you've got FSU. And so you're looking at FSU and you're saying 9-0. Well, what we learned this weekend, Nick, is record doesn't always tell you the whole story. Because Arkansas was the best damn 2-win team the SEC seen in a long time. 3-point loss to LSU, 7-point loss at Ole Miss, 3-point loss at Alabama. Competitive in pretty much everything. Right, so FSU 9-0, 24-7 win yesterday. But that game over Pitt, that game was 10-7 in the third quarter, Nick, deep into the third quarter. And Pitt had a chance to tie or take the lead, gave up a sack, and then self-destructed after that. Still a win, a road win for FSU, but that's a 2-win team that they struggled with, in a sense, yesterday. So FSU's played 3 road games, Nick. There was that one, and you know what the 2 other ones were? A 2-point win at Boston College, where Boston College missed the 2-point conversion, and the overtime loss to Clemson, where Clemson missed a field goal inside of 30 yards to win that game. You got to have some breaks along the way. The 3 national championship Florida teams each got huge breaks. You don't win national titles without them. Other teams had to lose. But FSU is not the same team, Nick, on the road that it has been at home. That is the game that when you talk to anybody, they say, you know what, maybe. But the only way that happens is if Florida hasn't lost it up here, provided let's suppose they lose the next 2 games and they're sitting at 5-6, then how much self-doubt is there? How much, you know what I mean? So it's a big task. FSU's going to have a lot of pressure. They're going to have to win that game and then an ACC championship game the next week to get in the playoff. Are they overlooking Florida at 5 wins? Well, no, they're never going to overlook Florida, okay? Just like we know Georgia's never going to overlook Florida. But they haven't played as well away from home. So, again, if you're a Florida fan, you're looking for things. You're looking for positives. Young teams still growing, still getting better. The emergence of Eugene Wilson. But the defense is absolutely going to have to step it up in that game. Nick, which one of these 3 games are you looking at? And we're going to go in a minute, but which one of these 3 games are you looking at and saying maybe they got a shot? Is that the one?
Yeah, I think Florida's going to get smoked next week, to be honest, especially if Jaden Daniels is there. LSU doesn't play defense, so you've got to win a shootout. Like you're going to have to score 40-plus points to beat that LSU team in Death Valley at night. I don't know, like if Missouri's a noon kickoff and now their season is bad, I've seen Florida lose that 11 a.m. local 35 degrees, 40,000 people in the stands game when there's no energy. You got to bring your own. I've seen them lose that game. The Florida-Missouri series in total is just weird. Maybe I'm dumb. Maybe I'm wrong. Probably am dumb. Probably am wrong. Plenty of times. But I think Florida could get Florida State. I think they could get Florida State for the reasons you mentioned. But it's not going to be because Florida State overlooks.
No. Any chance of it? They're going to be playing for so much.
If I had to pick one, I probably feel the best about Missouri winning on the road in Missouri, but I don't feel good about Florida winning on the road at all.
Interesting. Okay. Well, I mean, Do they win one of these final three, Nick? Do they become bowl eligible? I'm putting you on the spot. It's tough. Or do you not know? If you're not ready to make a call yet, I'll let you off the hook here.
I don't know. Let's make people happy with me, and I'll say yeah.
Well, listen,
people pleaser.
Listen, if they win one of these final three games, all of a sudden, I think the tenor changes. Right now, everybody's
not really. I think if one of those is FSU, then yes.
No. I think if any of them, I think any of them, LSU would be significant. Missouri's good this year. Missouri's good. I think that would be significant. But obviously, the FSU one would sort of be all right, man. I can see it now. The question is, are Florida people, if they lose these next two games, Nick, how many people are going to dump their tickets? How many FSU people are going to get in that stadium? It's Thanksgiving weekend. I've seen it happen before. And so, I wonder about that. I wonder about Florida's psyche. In a perfect world, they'd be competitive in these next two games and have a good feeling about themselves going into that Florida State game. Liquid says, what happens to the recruits if we lose the rest of the schedule? Well, that's a great question. I think that it obviously is a major concern because singular losses don't really mean much in recruiting. It's patterns. If they told these guys all along, hey, we're building something, be patient. Mm-hmm. So the recruits have expected that all along. But again, we get back to this. You won 6 games last year. How do you sell progress if you have less wins the next year? Now, theoretically, you could be better. You could have played a tougher schedule. You could have just gotten more bad breaks. But at the end of the day, they see 6 wins and they would see 5 wins if that's what Florida ends up at. They're very hard to sell that. Obviously, Nick, they've recruited at a very high level this season. And when you do that, you're going to have to fend off Ohio State for Amaris Williams, Georgia and FSU for Nasir Johnson, Auburn, which had the easy part of the schedule at the back end, is probably going to end up with possibly 7-8 wins. They're pushing for Jamonte Waller. People are coming after other recruits. Adaris Hayes, who we thought has been solid to Florida, visited Alabama this weekend, the 4-star linebacker. When you recruit good players, you're going to have to fight them off, and it becomes more of a challenge. There's no question. Now, the great equalizer, though, Nick, it could be NIL. NIL could help Florida keep this class together. They
need more checks, Keith.
Well, then you heard it here first. You need more checks. All right, let's get through a couple more comments, and then Nick's got to go. I think he's got some stuff to write. We got him busting his butt right now. Rob says the problem is there's no progression in this team, so having young players doesn't make you feel good if the team will improve next year.
But that's I get why you say that. But like before the season, I told you, catch your wins early because the back end of the season's brutal. So like I get that we're frustrated now. But the back end of the season was always brutal. You needed to win early. And they did. And they should have gotten a win Saturday. They didn't. Yeah.
They really needed to win. You're right. They really needed to win early. They weren't competitive at Utah. That was just that's one you'd like to have back, obviously. And Kentucky was a mess. Georgia, no problem there. And then yesterday. But you really, I think that – go ahead.
Go finish your point. I was going to comment on Eddie.
Of the 4 losses, I think even a good team probably has 2 losses right now. I mean, they weren't going to beat Georgia. They'd have to be really good to beat Georgia. They're not there yet. They're maybe a couple of years away. Yeah, but Utah was there. Utah had a backup quarterback. Utah was not theoretically going to score a lot of points.
We remember that though. Like Utah wasn't there, Keith. Utah slammed on the brakes, pulled the emergency. Okay.
I'm saying theoretically it should have been backup quarterback, former walk-on starting a quarterback, their star quarterback not playing. Yeah. Although he didn't play the whole season, and everybody was wondering he was going to play in the first game. And if the offense doesn't kind of self-destruct a few times early in that game, it could have been a different game, Nick. It really could have been, because I think if it was a competitive – if Florida's only down 7 in the third quarter, I think they have a chance, because I don't think Utah had the explosive offense at that point. I mean, they haven't all season. They scored 50-something points the other night against the terrible Arizona State team. But I think that one was there. But Georgia, Kentucky, no. And then yesterday. So, but then again, they – could have lost to South Carolina. It's just been a weird season. It's hard to put a finger. What's the identity of this team? I don't know. It's just not it's just not a great team right now. But
no,
it's a young team. And so you got to hope. You just got to hope. You got to take that leap of faith. But as a fan, as a person that writes checks, as a media person, you got to see something next year. I don't
Yeah.
think there's any way around that, Nick.
Nope.
Got to see
Nope.
something next year.
Not young next year, baby.
Yep.
Eddie, I think you need 3 offensive line coaches to get more top 4-star recruits. So, like, maybe in the offseason, they'll add another offensive line coach. That's just for recruiting.
I'm just going to throw in a few more comments. We appreciate everybody stopping by. If you like what we're doing, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, leave a comment. Right now, one more plug, Gators Online, part of the On3 network. Gators Online, $1 for 1 month right now. And, sometimes when the team's losing and not playing well, that's kind of a good time to vent with your fellow Gator Nation members. You know what I mean? It's been an interesting place to be on our site recently. But look, there's still 3 games left. There's still hope out there. There's a lot of young guys. Let's see what they can do. Let's see what changes they make in the last 3 games, Nick. I mean, maybe the staff says it's time to go full youth movement right now. Maybe some veteran guys that haven't been doing a whole lot, or we're not going to see anymore. We don't know. But anyway, I appreciate everybody stopping by. This is Talking Gators. Keith Niebuhr, that's me. Nick Delatorre, that's him, of Gators Online. Thank you, everybody. We hope everybody has a good, safe week. Maybe next weekend will be better. Enjoy your week. Enjoy the Florida LSU game. It's one of the great rivalries in the SEC. Everybody take care, and we'll do it again soon. See you guys.